Hey everybody. I wanted to show you a quick and kind of dirty way to get some smear frames and shot sculpts out of your animated Apex character. So the main tool we're going to be using to do this is the Sculpt tool, which was added to Houdini 20.5. And it's a really, really nice tool. Like, it works great. And you might have noticed that I made my screen a little bit smaller. I hope this is helpful for people who don't have ultra wides, and for people watching on their phones or that kind of thing. So yeah, hopefully this helps out. So if we look at the animation that I have here, I just have Electra just jumping and landing. A pretty simple animation, really. So if I really wanted to add some extra frames here or a little bit more dynamics, because once we get to this point, we could really use those smear and shot sculpts, right? We could really kind of stretch her out a little bit and make this a lot smoother, a lot more dramatic. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing we need to do is we need to invoke our scene. Because without this, we really can't do anything. So once we invoke our scene, we're going to want to output all character shapes. And that outputs, if we just press that, it automatically outputs the base shape. But of course, you can output other things as well. You can output the base skeleton if you wanted. But in that case, we're not going to. We're just going to get the base shape. But now we still can't really work with this geometry, can we? We can't select our geo at all because it's still packed geo. So we need to unpack it. And it's not as simple as just throwing down and unpack and, that's that. We actually have to go into our Apex folder structure and grab it from there. So I have my rig tree open up, and if I scale that out, or open that up rather, we have our scene add character.char and then our base output base shape. And that scene add character is coming from this, right? So I probably should have changed the name here. You can always change the name to Electra or whatever. And that's essentially the name of our character once we put it in. So now that we're outputting just the base shape, we get this scene add character base shape. So we need to unpack the folder, right? But we just want that base shape. So if I just put in base.shape, it's not going to be enough, right? Because we're actually in a nested folder, right? So there's a folder here and then another folder here, and then there's our character. So we're actually going to need another /star. And now we have our character, and we can do what we want with her. Very nice. So now that we have that, I'm going to mark this, right? I'm just going to color it something because this is going to be an important node. So now that we have this, I'm going to make a null and just branch off from there. And let's start with our smear frames. So I'm going to look for a couple frames here that I really want to, let's see, maybe right here, maybe on frame 2 to 3. So let's see, which piece of geometry do I really want? So I think I'm going to say I want frame 3 to work with, right? I'm going to grab these and move them around so I can match them up with frame 2. So I'm going to put down a time shift. And if I hit Control Shift and just click onto here, it removes that. So now we're no longer going along with the animation. It just freezes on frame 3. Time Shift is a really, really nice tool here. Oh, okay. I guess you can't have a letter. You have to actually have numbers and then, no, just a number. You have to have letters and a number in order for that to work. So, all right, whatever. I'm just going to leave it Time Shift. So we have frame 3. So now I'm going to go in and actually select the geometry that I want to use. And to do this, I like using the lasso tool. Just makes it a little bit more accurate for selecting geometry. All right, make sure I have all that selected. And now that I have the geo that I want, right, it's just going to be those. While I'm over the viewport, I'm going to hit Tab and type in split. So now I've split that. So now we have this geometry to work with. So we only want this geometry to show up on a single frame. So let's put down a switch. We'll pipe that into the first slot here. And we're going to put a null into the second slot. Okay. And then we can go and merge these two. So we have something like this. So we're going to want this to show up just on frame 3. So let's key that on frame 3. I just held down the Alt key and just clicked on the little number here. And that keys it automatically. Let's go back 1 frame. We'll hit that to 1 and go forward 2 frames and we'll set that to 1. Okay, so we only go bink and we show it. We only show it on a single frame here. All right, cool. The next thing I want to do is I want to get frame 2 to highlight, right? I want to be able to see frame 2 here. Almost kind of like a, what's it called? Like ghosting, you know, so I can just have like a ghost frame on frame 2. So I'm actually going to take this time shift and I'm going to switch that to frame 2. I'm going to select this node and hit E so that it's templated so that as I work, I can have that node showing up like that. All right. I'm going to put down a transform. And with that selected, let's actually keep this highlighted. And with this transform, I'm going to hit move pivot to centroid. And then I'm going to just roughly get this into the position that I want. So about halfway like that. Okay. Looks pretty nice. So now what we can do is we can start smearing these around. And I'm going to do that using the sculpt tool. Now, the sculpt tool is, you know, it's not as deep as other programs. You know, it's not like a ZBrush or probably not even like a Blender, but it's really robust. You know, I found it doesn't really fail very much. And it's definitely got the stuff that you need. And in this case, we're only going to be using one brush. So if I right click over the geometry that we're going to be sculpting, it shows the brushes that are available to us. And in this case, we're only just going to be using the move brush. So I can just hit 4. And then I want to scale my brush by holding down Control and Shift and then clicking on the geometry. And then I can just move the mouse back and forth, or a Wacom tablet. In this case, I have a tablet. So I'm going to make it nice and big so that I can really start sculpting these, really start smearing them around. So I want to get these to a place where they're kind of like in an in-between state, right? So we kind of get something like this. Right, to really get that smeary look. And you know, one thing about this is that while this is kind of a destructive technique, like, and that it's you know, once you're out of Apex, you can't really get back into Apex. You could always change your original animation, and it'll show up down here. So while you know, once while this kind of like takes you out of the Apex animation state, you can still go back up and change your animation around, and you know, all your sculpts, well, maybe not your sculpt, but the you know, the geometry that you split, the transform, everything will show up. And as a matter of fact, your sculpts as well. So your sculpts do show up as well, but they might be a little off. Okay, so then I have that. I have this. So we have a pretty nice little smear frame there, but I also want to get the head in there. There we go. Yeah, that looks pretty sweet. I like that. All right, so let's get the head in there as well. So we're going to go back to this frame 3. And I'm going to make a new chain here, but just by throwing down a null. And let's select the head. I'm going to press Control-Shift-H, and that'll select the sort of the closed geometry, right? Right. So that it basically like the geometry shell, right? So I'm going to do that to select the head, and tab, split, boom, got my head. All right, let's pull this back, and I'm going to want this time shift again, right? This character over here, so I can get that in between. Get that in between one more time. All right, I'm going to move the pivot to centroid on my transform object, and we're just going to kind of get that something like this. I'm going to look at it from both angles. Okay. Let's put down another sculpt. And let's actually keep this open. And we'll leave this templated, and we'll go in and we'll sculpt between these frames. Again, I'm going to hit 4 to get into my move tool. And I'm just going to scoot this around. Right? And we're doing a smear frame, so let's really push this. Cool. Now we have 2 separate smear frames here. And all we really want to do is just take these and merge them, and then take our main chain and we'll plug it into there so that we go bink, we only show it once. Let's untemplate this. Let's see how this is looking. Nice. Really nice, cool, cartoony effect. All right, now let's say I want to go to this frame as well. And I want to sculpt this a little bit further, right? And as a matter of fact, maybe we can go to frame 4 and really sculpt that. Or no, let's go to frame 3. And maybe we can sculpt these to kind of mesh a little bit better with this smear frame, right? So we can take this whole character and sculpt her to the smear frames that we just set up. So again, this is actually pretty simple to set up. We're going to put down a sculpt, and I'm not going to use a time shift in this case, because if we use a time shift, here, I'll just show you what I mean. So in this case, I'm going to go and I'm going to template this, and within our sculpt, we're going to sculpt the entire character here. All right, I'm going to hit 4 again so that we're in sculpting mode. And actually, you know what? Let's template that, right? So that we can actually see what we're doing here. So let's pull this back, right? And maybe we can even, kind of take our body, sort of move it a little bit like this. Right? Like really try to push this angle here, or this pose. Kind of flatten it out, right? So that she's moving. You kind of get that sense of motion, because that's what this is about. Is with the shot sculpting and smear frames is all just about motion, simulating. It's kind of a cool way to like if you're not, say you're not like, if I mean this is a great technique for what's it called, for stylized animation. It works really well. And yeah, Houdini is actually now very well suited to do this. Okay, so now I got my sculpt. And what I meant by not, or actually what I was saying before about the sculpt tool, is that it's really nice because even though I've sculpted my character, the sculpt shows up on on every frame, right? So that looks kind of strange, but we only really want it on frame 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a blend shape, and we're going to blend into that sculpt. Okay. And just to remember where I sculpted this, I'm going to put down F3, right? So frame 3, that's the frame that I sculpted it on. And within our blend shape, let's just blend into it. So we'll key that, and let's see. Yeah, I don't think I want it. Let's see. So let's turn it off pretty quick. Right, that looks pretty good. Let's see how this looks when it's all put together. So let's take this main chain, put that here. We'll turn that off so we don't see it anymore. Let's see how this looks. Yeah, the effect is subtle, but we're definitely getting something here. I kind of like turning off the lights and just using the just the flat rendering. You can really get a better sense of the silhouette. Cool. Yeah, we really get a lot of extra stuff here. Boom. Look at that. So if I wanted to add another blend shape, that's pretty easy. Or rather another shot sculpt, I just add another blend shape. So let's go down to, let's say, so sometimes with the shot sculpt, you have to kind of click out of it and then click back into it, and then it works again. So let's see. Let's go to here, and maybe we can kind of push this pose a little bit. So let's go, we're going to call this F13 because I'm going to sculpt this on frame 13. Actually, no, let's go 12. Okay. Again, let's get our move tool. And again, we're not going for perfection right now, people. Just trying to get the general idea of how this all works. So let me see if I can get my textures back. There we go. Yeah, I just had to get out of the sculpt state for just a sec. All right. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to kind of bow these arms out a little bit. Okay, cool. So now let's add this to our blend shapes, and we'll blend into it. Oh boy, that's right. That's the wrong blend. We need to add the other one. Boom. So we kind of compress Electra a little bit. So let's turn it off, right? We'll key it out. Boom. We'll key it in. Maybe a little bit earlier. And then we'll turn it off. See, so it's super flexible and really easy to add and subtract. And let's see. So we have, see that? So we stretched her out, and then we compressed her at the end. And I just realized we're not looking at our smear frame. So let's look at the whole thing together. So we got our smears, pull her down, boom. And there's our last blend shape there. So yeah, a quick and dirty way to get some really nice post effects to your animations in Houdini using Apex. Or not really using Apex, this is sort of after the fact. But then again, you know, if just to kind of reiterate the point here, let's say I wanted her feet to land on frame 3, right? Really kind of stretch her out. Let's try that. So I'm going to open up a window below. Whoops, not there. I want to open up a window below. Okay. And then I'm going to press Alt-6. And I like working in the graph editor. I'm an old Maya animator, and I was just constantly working in the graph editor. So let's turn on our controls. let's grab these IK handles and let's see. So we're going to want to, okay, so essentially what I want to do is I just want to get these to plant onto the ground on frame 3. So I'm just going to use the tween and just go, right? So we have that kind of stretch here. Cool. So we really stretch her out. And maybe I can even take our hips and move those down. All right. Now, if I jump to my final, everything is updated automatically. And this is the issue I was talking about, is if you do update your animations up top, especially within the smear frames, things do get a little screwed up. So just be careful when you're doing that. So if you really do need to make a change to your animation like we just did, what you can do is you can just get rid of the sculpts, right? And just sculpt it again. So this one works. So if I just go back and add another sculpt, I'm gonna put that in there. Jump out of it, get it back. So now we can take this and just redo our sculpts. Again, it's not a perfect solution, but it definitely does the job. So watch out for updating your animation up top, right? Because that could mess up your shot sculpts. But for the most part, they do hold true. Like, if you look at the head ended up, being pretty solid. Okay, so if we go back, right, just after that, now we have our animation. And if you really don't want to change things, right, like if you're really worried about that happening up top, you could always put down a stash and just stash the pose, so that even as you're making changes up top, you won't affect your smear frames. Now, we do have issues with this sculpt. Perhaps we can just kind of smooth things out. But, again, it is a pretty quick and dirty process, and it definitely yields some pretty good results. For instance, this sculpt ended up being pretty good, even after the change. Definitely a useful technique to have when doing some post effects on your animations. And thanks to Side Effects for releasing this amazing sculpt tool, which really just makes this technique possible. Again, I hope you guys found this useful. And as always, thank you for watching.